Anne is my fellow judge on the Liquid Amber Press Poetry Prize and a good friend and poetry colleague. So I'm really, really rapt to have her with us tonight. So I'm going to handball to you, Anne, to introduce our second bracket of open mic readers. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. I'd like to start by acknowledging the unceded Boonwurrung country from where I'm joining you tonight. And I just wanted to say one thing about Dominique's book that is really impactful, which is these beautiful red end papers. We saw it sort of as a background for the cover of the book on one of the slides, but they are actually red end papers, which I just think is absolutely so perfect and striking. So thanks very much.
I think Dominique and I talked about blood red, didn't we, Dominique? And the black and the white and the grey and the red. Did you want to comment on that? Or?
Yes, we did. The blood and the red is a recurring sort of image throughout the book, and I like to have that. And yes, a bit of color and all that bleakness. And of course, there is some violence to that poem too. So you can take it as an ambivalent kind of statement, but it's lovely. I'm really happy with the production, and I had interesting reactions from people, even in France, and people speak English, obviously, but the book is obviously a stunner before you open it. So thank you.
It is, confirm that. Okay, so this is the second bracket of the open mics, and I'm going to introduce Anthony Mills to you. Anthony lives in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales on Gundagara country. He spent most of his working life as a public health worker in the area of physical and mental health well-being. He now volunteers as a hospital chaplain. He has had a number of poems published in journals and in the Liquid Amber Lockdown Anthology, and has a forthcoming book, Miracle of Days, from Ginninderra Press. So welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Rose, and all the wonderful poetry that we've heard so far this evening. It's just been amazing to sit here and listen, and what a wonderful opportunity to really feel connected to poetry. I've got two short poems that I'd like to read. The first is called On the Highland Way, and Jennifer and Lindsay would probably know that the Highland Way is a road that runs through the Southern Highlands from Bundanoon to Marulan, and passes through some very old orchard country. So, On the Highland Way. A day perfectly ordinary, its breath drawn out voce morbida under a long stream of endless cloud. Small villages along a narrow valley, tiered abandoned orchards, ranks of dead trees, fallen packing sheds. Everything suddenly dreamlike, our voices cry out pitifully small. A wallaby spins across the windscreen, gives itself over to baffling flight, legs searching foothold among sky, its tearing joints unable to avert their limit. It lies half concealed by shadow among withered grass and leaves, crimson with autumn. Looking up, I wonder where the wind, without song or hymn, is taking the clouds. And the second poem is called Gift. Slight, flushed-cheeked, weighted by ritual, her hands budding with loaves, suddenly stalled behind the counter as I enter. Shreds of light from the window flour, salt, water visible through her skin. Noise sifts in from the open door, wind strumming, hubbub of waking cars. I lean in to smell the warmth, the leavened mystery stilled in its transformation. I choose a round ribbed loaf, memory thick crust, tongue and lips buttered joy in a long forgotten kitchen. Wrapped in my hands, I walk into the scrubbed street, surrendering to morning light, silently saying the word bread. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Anthony. Striking poems. Our next poet is Gayelene Carbis. Gaylene's debut collection, Anecdotal Evidence, was a finalist in the International Book Awards 2019. Her second book of poetry, Morning Light, will be published by Puncher and Watman in September. Welcome, Gayelene.
Thanks, Anne. Warmest congratulations, Dominique. Such an extraordinary launch, and I feel so privileged to be part of this and to hear such wonderful poetry and conversation. Thank you. I'll read one poem. It's called Embodiment in Quill. I have been rearranging my ankles. They no longer sit at the end of my legs. They are only a suggestion. I feel loose and lighter. I have been chanting too. My voice is fine, but I no longer want words, just sounds. My hair has grown long, but I'm keeping it high on my head. I seem taller. Meanwhile, my clothes grow small and smell. I ignore them. And housekeeping is not for women who write. Neither is maintenance. I've thrown out all my stilettos. I don't know how to wear stockings. Once I lay on my bed, contorted for a pair of nylons. I never forgot how painful it was. It wasn't physical, that I could bear. A living being is making his way through the house. I shut out dishes in the kitchen and keep my door open.
Marvellous, Gayelene, thank you. Next, I'd like to make a special welcome to Gabby Demay. Gabby has had a love for poetry and the written word for as long as she can remember. She is new to sharing her poetry and has started putting herself out there since graduating with a double degree in the arts and communication. So welcome, Gabby.
Hello. This is actually my first time ever reading a poem to an audience.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a little bit nervous. It's called Society's Labels, and it's about mental health, borderline personality disorder. It's now called emotionally unstable personality disorder. Yeah, so it's called Society's Labels, and here we go. To feel it all, the good, the bad, not dismal, nor never minimal. Heightened peaks others may never reach. It's these things that make me rich. If misled, it can be distorted. I don't see or hear things unreported. Always in objective reality, but emotions sometimes affect my mentality. I don't trust myself, but I always should. I've never been wrong, just misunderstood. Abused in so many ways sends me almost insane, but I've never slipped from reality. Emotions dysregulate and I don't trust, but it's for a reason when I should trust my gut. Misused and used, I react to heights so great I almost detach. Bordering the edge, I always bounce back. I am strong, what I feel is real. My advice to you in a letter I seal. Never doubt your instincts or be led astray. No one can bring me to my knees or take me away. Because I am learning me, with warmth I embrace.
Thank you so much. You read that with strength and clarity. It was great. Thank you. Our next poet is True S. Dowling. True is a poet, performer, editor, and writing teacher for Bendigo TAFE and Vic Uni. Her poetry has been awarded, read, or published in Australia, Ireland, the UK, and USA. And her verse novel, Butcher Baker, I'm not sure whether it's His Story or History Maker, was published February 21 by Birdfish Books. So welcome, True. Is it His Story or His Story?
It's His Story. Yeah. Thanks, Anne. And thanks, everyone. It's just been such an insightful, wonderful dose of poetry tonight. Really, really enjoyed it, especially since we're a COVID house at the moment. I have two poems tonight dedicated to my mother, whose anniversary is next week, 3 years of passing. Threads. My mother's clothes are threaded with tiny holes that map disintegration slowly. She holds a needle between the forefinger and thumb of her right hand to mend my father's worn knees and ripped pockets. She attempts to dispel tremors at intervals, while silver wefts and weaves in and out, closing gaps, patching his workdays back together with King G taups and baker's whites, as her own appear to thin. They sit by a flame blue as flesh, warding off colds, flu, and other ailments, sure of airborne dangers, drawn to the fire's heart. They lean on cushions flat as deflated tires, buffering hips and spines close to the bone. My mother is armed against wear for years to come. Her wicker basket holds spare darning needles, buttons, an army of spools carrying 10,000 feet of cotton, her usefulness intact. And the second poem is called These Reductions. This is a little closer to just before she passed. Her blush reappears in twilight sky, over and over on the drive home. And I'm not alone yet. Her hands are a wilderness of brown spots and veins, cold with waiting for the frost before dawn. Her fingers mime grasp, overhang mine. Each ridged nail reveals a sliver of moon. She plucks tissues like white-winged creatures from the earth of her lap. She bundles them close, dabs at crumbs, missing her mouth. Her timbre, retuned from a magpie's, fades through breath and air. Tears make no noise or fuss. Their leaves brighten, then fall across the years. Years elusive as blinking, now counted in hours spent together. Those years when I was never alone, she was practicing these reductions. Her shadow forming unwritten galaxies. Thank you.
Thanks, True. Very moving, poignant. Our next poet, I'd like to also extend a particularly warm welcome to, and it's Belinda Calderone. Belinda is an emerging poet. With family roots in Italy, she was born and raised in Australia on Wurundjeri land. Her lifelong belief in the power of words has led her through a range of professions, including working in a bookstore, researching and teaching literature, and the next one I particularly like, writing fundraising proposals for good causes. Though she has written poetry since childhood, Belinda is just beginning to share her work with the world, including through live poetry readings. So welcome, Belinda.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne. And it's so nice to be here with you. Thank you, Liquid Amber Press, for having me back to read again. So the poem I have for you today is called Visiting Nonno. And nonno is Italian for grandpa. So my grandfather passed away many years ago, but I wrote the poem not that long ago, just thinking back to towards the end of his life when I visited him in the nursing home, and he was in the later stages of dementia at the time, and I was thinking a lot about where he is, you know, and he wasn't able to speak at that time. So yeah, the poem just came to me. So I will read that for you now. Okay, Visiting Nonno. Barely visible under a shroud of bleach white blankets, you lie, small and curled as though rewombed, held once more in tender safety. Your thinned face reveals seams of time woven through gossamer skin, a map of all your moments. When my mouth meets that weary terrain, your eyes, glassy and faded blue, stop wandering the room and settle on mine. At the mercy of shifting winds, your landmarks, brows, cheekbones, jaw, rise and twist and fall, from pleading peaks to snow-cloaked plains and back again. Nonno, what is it like in the place between? Are you in a quiet field, watching the autumn tones of an ever-setting sun? Or are you in a pulsing jungle, cowering and tangled in a web of unending vines? You only sigh into the air between us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was lovely. The next poet is Glen Hunting. Glen is a writer from Perth, WA, now living in Central Australia on Arrente country. His writings have appeared in Portside Review, Recoiled 12, Burrow, Creatrix, and elsewhere.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here tonight. It's been a wonderful event, and congratulations, Dominique. And I can't wait to sample more of your work when I get my copy of After Cage. Just bear with me a second. I'll just bring my poem up. I'm just going to do one short poem this evening, and just in case you're not familiar with the terminology that I repeat throughout, the poem and the term itself refers to people who have recently got sober but are struggling with the practical and personal difficulties associated with sobriety. Dry drunks. Dry drunks have entered the building but wish they hadn't. Dry drunks don't realise that no one's got a gun to their heads. Dry drunks can't remember a world without doses and sabotage. Dry drunks are like amputees who still feel their limbs. Dry drunks want a road to Damascus, but not the conversion. Dry drunks are afraid their affliction can never be forgiven. Dry drunks aren't awake to the beauty their medicine has stolen. Dry drunks find metaphors more often than they find solutions. Dry drunks don't believe how far you say they've come. Dry drunks bare their nerves and wait for the days to caress them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glen. That was a very powerful poem. And our last reader tonight is Emilie Collyer. Emilie lives on Wurundjeri country, where she writes poetry and plays, and is currently a PhD candidate in creative writing at RMIT. Her debut full-length poetry collection, Do You Have Anything Less Domestic, which is fantastic, was published by Vagabond Press in 2022. Welcome, Emilie.
Thanks, and thanks to everyone. My goodness, to be ending a night like this, I will keep it brief, but it's been such a beautiful evening of poetry. The launch, Dominique and Marion, thank you, Liquid Amber Press, and all the poets and all the listeners. Whew, I wasn't sure what I was going to read, but given the beautiful discussion about that kind of dance between dance and words, and one art form speaking to another, and also Mark's beautiful ekphrastic poems earlier, I thought I would read a poem from my collection, which is called Instructions for Colour. And just a little bit of context, some of the language in it was drawn from, I discovered some early kind of notebooks of my uncle who died last year, just before the age of 19. He was by all accounts, a very talented artist as a young man in his 20s, but then suffered a great deal for many issues with mental illness throughout his life and never practiced art again after those couple of years. So it was very poignant for me to find this notebook, and I tried to fashion some poetry out of it. So that's the context, and the piece is called Instructions for Colour. Hue, value, chroma are the distinctions that make up colour. Rules dictate how colours relate, what the effect is on the eye and mind. Do you know hue? Red, yellow, red, yellow, yellow, green, green, blue, blue, purple, purple, red, purple. The value of colour is the amount of light inherent. White is value 1 and black is 9. More rules when it comes to chroma, which is the strength or intensity. Mix with grey, a colour is lessened in intensity, a lesson in intensity. Colours are strong by virtue of contrast. Red sits in the middle, value 4, but bursts of it disturb behind the bedroom door, and outside where I have been asked to bring in flowers for the table. Too strong, and I think will cut me. Grey backgrounds neutralise all colours placed upon them. They should be avoided wherever possible. What is the grey equivalent of red purple? A plum rotten on a tree? Wine that tastes like drain water and leaves a grit across your teeth? A dead heart shriveled that cannot remember beating? Write the instructions down again and again, in the garden behind the door. Red is only supposed to be value 4, can't remember how to reduce its intensity. Instructions are faraway words on a page. Black and white, remote, like speaking on a long distance line, and I have intercepted the faulty transmission. There are delays. Days which have leaked into weeks, months washed into years. Instructions read like an itch in the soft tissue of my brain, a dry, tinny taste in my mouth that I cannot wash out. Electroshock therapy numbs colours to neutral. So I put them away. Don't look at them again. It is easier. Years wash into, there are no leaks. Where once there were explosions of roses, hailstorms of honey, roasted moon, glistening lashings of full cream dew spurting from the mouths of cherry-stained jellyfish, there is now static. Grey backgrounds neutralise all colours placed upon them. They should be avoided wherever possible. Intensity scales can be made by mixing a colour with its grey equivalent. The mix is wrong. Without colour, what? No way now to fix it once the paint has dried. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilie. And that's a wonderful bookend with Mark's poem. I think it was based on a Miro painting. So that was a lovely little serendipity at the end.